Alright, here we're going to continue on trying to figure out what strategy is the best to use. So our next problem here is p cubed plus 7p squared minus 3p minus 21. And again, our first rule of factoring is always to pull out a greatest common factor. But in this case, we do not have something that is common to every single term. So now we need to look and see how many terms we have. Because there are 4 terms, our factoring strategy should be factor by grouping. So when you remember, your factoring by grouping is where you kind of split up your polynomial into the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms. And then we can look to see what do these first 2 terms have in common. Well, they both have a p squared. So if we factor out that p squared, we're left with p plus 7. Now for the next 2 terms. And if you'll remember from us doing factoring by grouping, we really want to factor something out, and we want that binomial to be p plus 7 when we're done. So what do I need to factor out of this first term in order to be left with a p? Or another way of saying it is what times p is negative 3p? And that would be negative 3. Now let's check it and see if it's right by looking at the next term. Is negative 3 times a positive 7 a negative 21? Yes, it is. So we factored out the correct term, or the correct factor, I should say. Now, because we have a p plus 7 in common for both terms, we can factor that out. If I can get my pen to work here better. P plus 7. Oh goodness, my pen has decided it doesn't want to work. There we go. So when I factor the p plus 7 out of both of these terms, we're left with p squared minus 3. So this is the way that this would factor. Now let's do another one. Here we have a 9x to the 4th minus 1. Now, again, we have to always go back to our strategies. The first rule is to factor out a greatest common factor, and in this case we do not have one. So we look at how many terms we have. We have 2 terms, which means it either has to be a difference of squares or a sum or difference of cubes. Well, 9 is a perfect square, and x to the 4th is a perfect square, and 1 is a perfect square. So hopefully this is a difference of 2 squares. This is a difference because it's a subtraction, so we should be able to use that difference of 2 squares formula. Now, in order to do that, we really need to have something squared minus something squared to fit our pattern. So what do I have to square to get 9x to the 4th? That would be 3x squared. When I square this, I get 9x to the 4th. And what do I have to square to get 1? Well, in that case, that would be a 1. So remember back from our difference of 2 squares we did before, this 3x squared becomes our a term, and the 1 becomes the b term. Then remember your factoring formula said that we take a plus b times a minus b. And that is the way that this would factor.